Hi, everyone, and welcome to Pittsburgh Current's Pittsburgh Concert Series. It's Love Pittsburgh Music Month in the offices here. And what better way to show the love for Pittsburgh music than we have the Pittsburgh Saxophone Quartet in the studio today. On my far left, on the tenor sax, we have Patrick Briner. On alto, we have Lynn Speakman. To my immediate right, we have Ben Barson on baritone sax. And on my far right, Ben Opie on soprano saxophone. So that makes the quartet. They're going to play a few songs for you today. We're going to talk a little bit first. First of all, Ben, why don't you tell me, when did the group come together and how did it happen?
Sure, and just to clarify, because there may be another Pittsburgh Saxophone Quartet in existence, we're the Quartet, C-O-R-E. So not that we have a page or anything. It's just if we did, it would be called that, I think. We still have to decide it by consensus. But yeah, we came together. I had a recital for my program at the University of Pittsburgh and included a saxophone quintet, actually, and Federico Garcia de Castro, who is the executive director of Alia Musica, the sort of creative new music nonprofit, invited us to play at the Pittsburgh New Music Festival, which was back in September, and that sort of forced us to develop a repertoire and get our stuff together, you know. And so we've been playing since then, sort of bi-monthly maybe, and we've been really fortunate to be working with Lynn, who came on board for our gig at Hambones. Right, and we've also been able to open up for some really interesting acts, which I'll let some of these other folks talk about. But you know, it's been a really interesting journey, kind of taking us through Pittsburgh new music via the saxophone quartet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I wondered too. Like, I know with I saw a look at the material you're doing today. Some of them were written by other people, but of the originals that are here, were they written with the quartet in mind, or did they come first?
The two original pieces we're going to play today were both written specifically for the quartet. So there'll be one by Ben and one by me, and they were written for the purpose of playing that September New Music Festival. And I'll add that even though we're not going to be able to feature them today, Lynn and Patrick have both contributed material to the book that we look forward to playing in the future.
So one more question, and then I'll let you play. What is it like writing for saxes? I mean, it's obviously different for when you have a group with a rhythm section, but what kind of things do you think about? In fact, then I'll turn that one over to you.
Sure, why not? I think the unique thing about a saxophone quartet or any group of four horns is you can really play around with voicings, with chords, and you can make a lot of different unique, sometimes very lush, sometimes very out there sounds with four horns, and without the don't get me wrong, I love rhythm section, but without the rhythm section getting in the way, it's just us, you know. So it's kind of fun.
Great. Well, with that, we'll let you play a few songs. You want to introduce the first one?
This is a transcription I made of Thelonious Monk's Crepuscule with Nellie.
One of my favorite Monk songs, by the way. Got so lost in it there. I wasn't sure when it was ending, and I didn't want it to. All right. If you're just tuning in, this is the Pittsburgh Saxophone Quartet, or Quartet, as Ben called it earlier. And we're here in the Pittsburgh Current offices. So that last piece was, it has an interesting backstory to it. Do you want to explain it, Ben?
Yeah, I feel kind of embarrassed because I'm not totally ready. But there was a person who used to book the Brooklyn Academy of Music whose first name was Harvey. And does anyone know his last name? He was kind of like a famous impresario in the kind of avant-garde performing arts scene in New York. So basically, I think Fred wrote him this piece just to be like, thanks for the gigs, and if you could keep them coming, that would be great.
Fred being...
Oh, and Fred, I'm sorry, he's a Asian American, Chinese American baritone saxophonist and composer who passed away in 2014. And he was really innovative. As you can tell, his writing is all over the place, kind of spanning kind of orchestral chorale music to jazz, odd time signatures, really exploring the range of the horn, going up to octaves that usually aren't expected or called for in our normal repertoire, whatever genre we're in. And yeah, it's a big loss for the creative scene and the creative music scene in this country when he passed away a few years ago. So one of the things that I like to do with this quartet is to showcase some of his saxophone quartet writing as a way to introduce audiences to his particular work.
Yeah. Now, did you study with him, or did you know him?
Yeah, he was my I finished my undergrad at Hampshire College, and I moved to New York to be the worst waiter ever. And I was lucky enough to meet him, and he took me seriously enough to kick my ass, as he liked to say publicly, and all kinds of weird university presentations that was completely unnecessary for him to say that. But the point is, he took our work together seriously. I showed up late once, and he made me cook for him for a few days, and it was kind of a crazy, kind of a cool, old school, crazy relationship. And but he we did a lot of interesting work together, and he passed his horn on to me when he passed away, which is what I'm playing here today. Yeah.
Want to hold it up there so people...
Yeah, sure. I just don't want to grab it by the neck for
I'll
different
hold
reasons.
that.
So yeah, it's a interesting horn. It's a Selmer Mark 6 with a low A, which some baritone purists only play low B flats because they tend to be more resonant in the low range, but this one works pretty well. And it's interesting, the serial number actually has my birthday on it, so I don't know. Well, my combination of my wife and I's birthday is 1977-88. So I don't know. I hope he's happy, with me playing it and not, too upset when I miss low notes, for instance, which happens from time to time.
Are those rubber bands on it up at the neck too?
Yeah, these are just, I don't know, the classical flute players do this a lot. There's a specific kind of metal plate product, which I don't feel comfortable promoting on your show because I'm not endorsed by them, but they kind of increase the resonance of the horn, and Ben Opie thinks I'm ridiculous for putting them on. But I enjoy them. I think they help the baritone cut through a little bit, so yeah.
So you were talking about the range in that tune, and I was thinking about how it didn't sound like any baritone notes that I could hear. How far above the typical baritone range were you going there?
Well, the typical range is 2.5 octaves. Of course, like classical saxophone players and jazz saxophone players have been breaking that barrier for decades. But, typically, when you're learning in middle school and high school, it's from low B flat to high F, which varies in concert pitch depending on our horn. That this particular piece requires you to go up 2 octaves above that range, which effectively doubles the range and puts the baritone into the soprano territory. So, there's some advantages and disadvantages to that. Some people don't like the sound of that brightness and kind of squeakiness, but so that's a challenge as a player to try to figure out how to make that lyrical and not just like, wow, look at me,
Ben, on the soprano, are you going up about as high too?
There's a point in that piece where the baritone is scored higher than the soprano is. The range we're talking about has a word, it's called altissimo, and there's a little bit, but I didn't play it there, but Ben did write some altissimo range soprano for his piece. So now that's where everyone is like, oh, marvelous, soprano playing extra, extra high.
Don't want to cheat and just get a sopranino or anything.
No.
It was worth handing it to you for that. So before we get back into the music, I wondered how much improvisation factors into these tunes too. And Patrick, why don't you field that one, since I haven't asked you anything yet?
Well, varies on the it varies from piece to piece. For instance, in the first piece that we played, Crepuscule with Nelly, that's just we just read that straight down. We don't improvise in the traditional sense of improvising at all. We might play one of the rests a little bit longer than we have in the past. That's about as far as we stretch on that one. The piece that we just played is also pretty strict. We're following Ben a lot for the cues and tempo and time changes, and toward the end of the piece there, I was improvising a little bit of a solo for a few bars while the other three accompanied me. In the next piece, there is quite a bit of space for Lynn to improvise and a little bit for me to improvise, and then you'll hear us all kind of stretching a little bit toward the end. So it does depend from piece to piece. And yeah, actually, to one of your questions earlier too, that's one of the unique things about the saxophone quartet, is trying to figure out exactly how to orchestrate these sections where there's space for one person to improvise or more than one person to improvise, because traditionally there might be a bass player and a drummer who are outlining a sense of time or who are outlining a form with some chord changes. With us, we tend to do a lot of repeated phrases, a lot of what might be called ostinatos, where it'll be like something that's a bar long or 2 bars long that you'll hear repeated over and over again, that help us keep the time and sort of outline a sense of form and a sense of harmony. And we're experimenting with other ways to outline and imply those senses of form and time and harmony as well. So
great. Yeah. Well, I know that by looking at the music down here that you wrote this one. Ben, you want to introduce it?
Sure. And just want to say, I don't know if this is our last little interlude, but we are playing tomorrow as a quartet and also with some percussion accompaniment on some tunes at the Carnegie Library in Homewood. It's part of the Jazz on the Steps series, and that's from 5:30 to 7:30. So if you just Google Jazz on the Steps or Carnegie Library of Homewood, you can catch us there. This next song is called Trueque, which refers to a practice of bartering that's kind of like bartering, but with sort of an intentionality behind it, trying to move beyond monetary exchange and try to like re-envision ourselves beyond numbers and hours and time. So that's the spirit of this song, is like, how do we create a way of exchanging things without resorting to the master's tools, I guess. So without further ado.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you.
some more.
That was the Pittsburgh Saxophone Quartet with a song with red in it. A Ben Opie composition, right? With a sly reference to Charles Mingus there.
A little bit of a reference to Charles Mingus, but really Red was the grandson of a longtime family friend who died very suddenly and unexpectedly. So it's dedicated to him and his family.
Great tune. And the Pittsburgh Saxophone Quartet's playing tomorrow at Carnegie Library in Homewood, 5 o'clock, correct? 5:30. I'll get there early. Get some good parking. So in closing, I'm Mike Shanley, music writer for Pittsburgh Current. I want to thank Jake and Annabelle for making it sound really good up here. Thank you guys for that. And from all of us here at Pittsburgh Current, we'll see you. The next concert series performance is on July 16th. It'll feature Chip and the Chargers, so be sure to tune in for that too. Thanks.